Good afternoon, everyone. We are also vigilant panellists that we were ready to go 10 minutes early, and you're vigilant audience, so we're going to get going, and then maybe we can start and finish early. That would be amazing. Or more time for Q&A, which I think is really important. More Q&A. Okay, all right, you heard that. Very welcome to this afternoon's session on partnerships, and I think Tom gave us a great kind of warm-up act in terms of talking about the urgency of the situation and about, as the sector, we need all to come together to tackle this problem, but all of this needs for us to be working in collaboration and for us to be working in partnerships, and that's what this afternoon's panel is all about. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicola Mathers, I'm Chief Executive of Future of London, and Future of London came about, about 15 years ago, from a group of housing directors in boroughs going, we're all trying to deliver really complex programmes and we need to do more to learn from each other and share and collaborate. And Future of London is now an organisation with 60 members. We have lots of housing programmes to support councils delivering homes. So I'm delighted to be chairing this session, which again is all about partnership and about collaboration. I really want to hear from you as well, everyone in the audience. So I'm going to ask a question, we're going to have a bit of a discussion and a debate, but I really want everyone to be able to input and contribute to the conversation. And wouldn't it be amazing if some partnerships could come out of this session on partnerships? That would be great. So I'm going to invite, first of all, our panellists just to very briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll go on to the conversation. Over to you, Jake.
Hi everyone. My name is Jake Snell. I'm from Abry Housing Group. We're a housing association that's got about 55,000 homes covering from the West London all the way to kind of Exeter in the southwest. I also sit as a director on the board of Building Better, which is a consortium of kind of like-minded organisations that are trying to break down the barriers of MMC, but also we've created some procurement conduits to the market as well.
Press the button, don't I? Yep. Oh, you don't? No, it just works. Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Nigel Osteam. I'm an architect. So I think what I'm going to be talking about today comes from the perspective of being an architect rather than a different discipline. I'm project delivery lead at Hawkins Brown and also have my own business, Osteam Consulting, where I provide consultancy services to other architects. In terms of this space, I led the development of the RIBA's DFMA plan of work overlay about 3 years ago. I sit on a couple of panels, the BSI's Technical Committee CB301 and the PAS 8700 that we're all looking forward to coming out in April on MMC in housing. But I think more particularly to this, I've been involved in a couple of R&D projects trying to look for solutions for standardisation, which I think we'll probably talk about later on.
Hello everyone, my name's Tom Cox. I'm the Construction Solutions Director for Saint-Gobain in the UK and Ireland. Been with Saint-Gobain now for an incredible amount of time, from product development and manufacture through more recently into off-site and solutions applications, both in the UK but on a global basis as well.
Good afternoon, Trudy Sully. I'm a Director for Industrialised Design and Construction at Mott MacDonald. And just for a couple of years now, but before that I was a director on the Construction Innovation Hub, which was a 4-year government-funded programme working in collaboration with government departments and industry and academia to develop new approaches and tools for delivering better buildings in better ways. And that is what I now do within Mott MacDonald's, looking at how we can actually move forward to deliver more productively and more efficiently.
Great, thank you very much. So the opening question to everyone on the panel is, how do you think partnerships between stakeholders can boost housing delivery in the UK? Do you want to go first? You go first, Jake.
I'm happy to start. I've kind of put this into a couple of different categories. So strategically, and I think there's some colleagues and friends from Homes England here as well, but certainly the drive from Homes England and the specification of the 25% has massively stimulated the market and made people kind of really look to trying to achieve those ambitions and goals. So I think we need to keep that momentum going. I think, you know, if anybody's here from Homes England, please, or the GLA, please keep that drive going, because it does stimulate that change. Likewise with local authorities as well. So we are seeing local authorities kind of with the challenge of sustainability really needing partners like us to deliver for them and help meet their ambitions. Operationally, really, really complicated. So what systems do we use? Who's out there to do them? All framed around this kind of insolvencies, people going bust, etc., etc. So whilst we see these opportunities and we see these organisations that are fantastic and their products are amazing, we have to go through a very, very challenging rigor of risk assessments and understanding what's working and what's not. An enabler to this is people like Building Better. So another partnership which we've certainly lent into is this Building Better partnership. So understanding from others what they do, how they do it, what the problems are if somebody does go insolvent, and how they unpick this. And then we go into sort of, and that's also procurement as well. So if we need a route to market, we can use people like Building Better, we can use OSHA, we can use others. But contractually, we all love a JCT still. There's different forms of contracts, but I think I guess from our perspective, we still like a JCT, but you can finesse these kind of systems. But going into the worlds of sort of PCSA agreements, or really understanding sort of pain and gain, and sharing that risk and understanding, I think is sort of key for us. And I think being honest and trustworthy and building those relationships. So whilst everything might seem great on the tin, actually, if we really need to understand that. So is there some space with open book? Is there some space with kind of putting some work at risk from both parties? I think we do need to take some risks. I think HAs are quite risk averse, and maybe just taking a bit more of a risk sometimes is sort of key to that. I also, and I've raised this on different forums, we do need exit strategies. If we're going to use a different form of construction, and if it goes wrong, how do we get out of jail? What's our get out of jail free card that comes at the end? So to all of the contractors in the room, if your solution and you know, just having that as an offer to any HA to say, look, you know, worst case scenario, we're in a collaboration with somebody else over here, that actually they can step in and support that completion of the site.
So we're talking about partnering fundamentally today, and I think one of the enablers for partnering is the standardization that needs to build into that. There was, but I think we need to, to my mind, I think we need to get the right sort of standardization, and I'm talking about the design standardization really. There was an article in the Architects Journal recently about the Australians bringing out a pattern book approach, where they had a competition to come up with 5 standard house types. And I was quoted there as saying that I don't think this is the right approach. I think it's too prescriptive, and I don't think it will work, partly in terms of our sort of ability to respond to local place, but also I don't think the supply chain is really set up for that yet, and I think it's a bit cart before horse. So it's very easy for us to come up with standard solutions, and I've certainly been involved in some of that myself, but I don't think it's the right way to do it. I think it's too prescriptive. So I think really what I wanted to say, you know, largely today, was that we need to start looking for other approaches to this and working in a different way. I think sometimes we try and go too far. We sort of over standardize in a way, and it just falls over because we're just not ready for it. So yeah, my sort of opening gambit really is to say, let's think about this from the point of view of what we're designing, and let's start taking baby steps towards standardization. You know, sort of in a footballing analogy, take the back 4 with us, so in a line, so that we don't get caught in the offside trap, because, you know, at the moment, I think that's what's partly happened, particularly with Category 1, and I think we need to look for slightly different solutions.
So partnerships is really my entire duration career within construction is about enabling and facilitating effective partnerships, because having come from worked in a whole range of other industries actually, successfully moving forward and transforming any industrial environment requires people to work together to overcome challenges to then be able to compete going forward. If you don't start by working with each other, then you just end up duplicating effort and spending too much and not actually really creating the environment to make a significant change. A lot of the work that I've done, and certainly the Construction Innovation Hub, I mean, ultimately we ended up with over 600 industry partners working on that in a whole different range of environments and ways, and overcoming the initial lack of trust, going back to one of the earlier sessions, was one of the biggest things we had to achieve. People had to have more confidence to work and trust in each other, that there would be mutual benefit to be able to move forward, and then have, as we've also seen today, hearty debates from different perspectives. Standardisation is part of the key to that, and we can probably come back to a discussion about pattern books, because I quite like them, but in the right context, but we'll save that and come back.
Yeah. Thanks, Trudy.
And yeah, sorry, I'm here representing obviously the suppliers. With a big old company, 360 years old, and it just came home to roost me last week when I was with some big contractors, where we stood up as a group and individually presented the silos of products that we manufacture and provide, and we're with contractors who produce a product which is a building. And I sort of stood up as the person who's looking to coordinate this sort of thing, to say, and now we're going to talk to you and involve you to start to understand how we can apply services, solutions to a large portfolio of products to give you a solution to the problems you have. And I'm sort of pointing the finger at us, but also pointing the same finger at the industry, because we all sort of fall into those silos within the design process, within the costing process, within the regulatory process. And the partnership piece is absolutely key to getting everyone working together to break silos down to really drive efficiency in construction. And that's really where we are and what we're trying to look at.
Almost like is there a sense of risk and fear from being honest? But actually that's you kind of want to do that, because you're going to go into a partnership and it's going to be rocky at some point. So have those arguments, those discussions early on, and work out when it goes wrong. That's because it's bound to happen. When we'll come back to the issue of trust, because that is a kind of how people get on about. But I do want to go back to the standardisation and the pattern book and panel. Some people are for that and some people aren't. So you're not.
I'm happy to start.
Yeah,
I need a mic.
start, yeah.
Is anyone here from Be First? No, I mean, this is not a negative thing, but I'm not about to say something bad. It's quite the opposite. No, so this thing, I think, Jake and I were just about to talk about this at the beginning, and I was saying, I've written a pattern book, but I think I've had people coming up to me recently and saying, "Oh, you're against pattern books, are you?" Because of this, conversation that went on in LinkedIn after the AJ article. And I'm not. I wouldn't have written one but it came clear to me that we've got to be really clear what we're talking about. And I think we were perhaps, in hindsight, slightly sloppily using the term pattern book. It was a convenient thing. I mean, probably came up with the name of it, maybe sort of 18 months or more ago. And I think the conversation is starting to change now, because we're talking about, when people are talking about pattern books now, like the Australian version, and I guess maybe the one that's happening in Wales at the moment, we're talking about a different sort of thing. So just to sort of set out my position on this, and having put together a piece of work which was standardising apartment layouts and so on, I felt that went too far in the end. And there are other reasons why it didn't end up being taken up, partly because of the need for housing associations to focus on their existing stock and so on. So the programme dropped. But where I sit now, personally, is that I think there is a position, but the standardisation has to be this sort of light touch standardisation. So it's a sort of light touch, sort of high-level platform approach, and it's standardising things like grids, maybe sort of depths. And I'm talking about mid-rise developments here rather than houses, although the same principles could probably be applied. So it's a sort of light touch standardization that we as designers can gather around and make our whole design process much more productive at the beginning, because we undoubtedly do spend a lot of time redesigning the wheel when we do these things. So yes, we could standardize some category 5 assets, and we ought to try and do that. And part of the work, this patent book with Be First, was talking to that buyers club, and unfortunately it didn't quite happen in the end, as Tom was saying earlier. But I really think that's the way we should go. We've absolutely got to standardize what we can for the category 5 components. So, you know, bathroom pods, utility cupboards and so on. Let's not redesign them, because we're wasting our time doing that. And then get the supply chain focused around it so that we do have the ability for, you know, combined authorities and so on to come together and use that buying power. And then the rest of it, I think, is a relatively light touch standardization, but you know, there are things that the space standards drive us to, like, you know, standardization in bedroom sizes, and we won't build apartments that provide more space than that, because they don't provide more value. But there is a sort of 80-20 principle in this, the sort of Pareto principle. And I think, you know, typically no building is 100% MMC, and no building, particularly where the land value is high, can be 100% standardized, to my view. You can maybe standardize 80% of it, but you've got to accept that the last 20% is perhaps a little bit more bespoke. So let's not kill ourselves over making the whole thing standard. Let's standardize, let's maximize the amount of standardization, but it does need to be dependent on the site and our, you know, the way that we address the brief and so on. So use some sort of fairly light touch principles, which will save us a lot of time in the early feasibility stages and can be taken through to production stage. The final thing I was going to say is that in this patent book, we had standardized in as much as what the design would lead you to a solution which could be built using the different MMC systems. So without changing the design after planning, which often happens in Resi, as we know, you know, unfortunately we get Resi designs that can't actually be built because they don't meet building regulations because of the way that these things are done. It's slightly crazy. But in this system, and this is not particularly new, but if you followed the patent book, then you could build using light gauge steel or a crosswall system, you know, or indeed go back to traditional or precast without having to change it. So I think there are some principles, to my mind, that we could all gather around as an industry, but they are, as I say, I think they're relatively light touch, and we can push them too far.
There's two things that kind of come into mind, which is the product standardization, which I think is an absolute. So that kind of answers my question about the exit strategy. If we're all using a kind of a same systemized approach or model, that's absolutely right. And I think if everyone buys into that, it removes the risk, certainly from a client's perspective. We also discussed around standard house types. Every single HA that I know has their own set of standard house types that all pretty much look the same. And every single time we go to an architect to say, this is our new site, we got a standard set of house types, they won't work on this site. And we're kind of led by our professional services. And I think there needs to be some conversation to say, well, collectively, what does work? We've all got a problem here that we need to face on. Stop, you know, chucking back this excuse that standard house types don't work, because I'll look at the two drawings and I'll go, well, they're fractionally different. And it, you know, is it just a way of kind of doing your own finesse on something, or should it be more an architect's role to be designing that placemaking approach a bit more? So there's two things there. Absolutely, products. It removes the risk for us, and that interoperability, we've spoke about it for years now, but it's that standard house types as well. But collectively, how do we come up with this is the base model and this is what we can all use and work, and there's no pushback, but there's a huge cultural shift there that I think we need to challenge.
Sack your architects that wanted to make tweaks. There you go, that's an easy one.
Noted.
I'm often accused of putting architects out of jobs, but Nigel and I do get on most of the time. The thing is, unfortunately, we're not going to disagree enough here, because we all fundamentally agree on the principles about standardization in the right place and balancing that with variability where it's needed, local, environmental, material availability, etc. And that is the fundamentals of a platform approach. That's what we based the concept of building the product platform rulebook on. And that is what some patent books are trying to do. I think there's sort of that balance, though, between where we do want to maintain that flexibility and the opportunity for variability, as opposed to where we can actually deliver high volumes of key assets in more standardized ways. And I'm talking processes as much as products and people and relationships and everything else. And I think I'm really looking forward, and I'm optimistic, cautiously so, about, as Nigel mentioned, the Welsh patent book, which has just been launched a couple of weeks ago, sponsored by Welsh Government, a collaboration of 23 housing associations and social landlords, all agreeing on what they're delivering and then working with local architects and local supply chains to develop this patent book to try and address and deliver these houses, 18 different types, from 1-bedroom flats to 3-bedroom houses across Wales, effectively, efficiently, affordably. And that's the sort of case study that we really need to demonstrate how it can be done in an environment with agreement of all the parties. And then we need more flexibility, more product platforms to be able to deliver more asset types in different environments.
And as the manufacturer in the room, obviously manufacturing can't be industrialised if you don't have scale and standardisation. I mean, we are extremely efficient at manufacturing plasterboard, but we've got a very standardised range of plasterboard we manufacture. Conversely, when you look at some of our off-site businesses, the ones that are specifically focused on self-build, we've got framing lines which are running at about 20% efficiency, because every single panel is different, every single panel's got a different specification, and you're manufacturing plots, not SKUs. And as an example, we've been working with quite a large housing association. We've taken the house types, we've tweaked those house types to a grid, which fits very, very closely to where they are. And across a range of 5 house types, there's 6 standardised SKUs that we can manufacture to scale across an estate of around 4,000 new build units a year. And the actual wrap finish can be hugely differentiated. It's just the chassis and the panel is very standardised. So we can put any hat on it, you know, a hip roof, a standard roof, or wrap it in anything you want, or change it by the fenestrate finishings. But the chassis is very, very standard, which promotes efficient and costly manufacturing. Without that, the cost is just prohibitive to scale.
Is the PAS answering some of those challenges? PAS 8700?
To a degree. But it is just aligning the scale and the volume. Because obviously, if we're investing in a new timber frame factory, you've got to have a minimum of 1,000 units going through that. And to get an efficient timber frame factory, you could probably take that up to 1,500 in the same factory. But allowing the aggregation with clients who will see the demand, and the aggregation here isn't about saying, right, it's got to be these panels or it's got to be this. It's, as Nigel mentioned, a degree of thought process that can allow any supplier to supply into that design. It's just other suppliers may take different approaches, and it's just aligning volume and driving standardization.
I was just going to say, it sounds like we need a digital kit of parts to me. Anyone got one of those coming up?
Only.
Thoughts from the audience?
I've got a roving mic.
Oh, okay.
And Nicola, if it's your mic.
Sorry, Nena.
Hi. So I was part of the Northeast London Buyers Club, and the whole point of the Be First pattern book was to do exactly that. It's car manufacturing. It's to get the chassis. You can wrap it around whatever you want. And there is, for people who talk about the locality, there is a London vernacular. I mean, if you sit me in any street in London, I could probably get lost because all the houses look alike. So what are we really talking about? It's about actually getting to that volume and scale. So I don't actually have a question, I'm just making a point. So, sorry. I'm agreeing with all of you. Sorry, who wants the mic?
I think we might have questions for you, Nena.
Can I say, I mean, I agree, there is, because we've got space standards and things like, the external amenity. So, we have balconies and they are, thankfully to some extent standardised in their construction, but not in their appearance. We use a lot of brick, because brick is a great material to put on side. So yes, there is a London vernacular for sure, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, you look at all the sort of Georgian and Victorian terraces that we have, and they look the same, and they're fantastic. They're some of the most loved buildings in the country. So look, you won't get any arguments from me about this. It's the way to do it, I think.
On that point of brick as well, we do have a very standardised route of delivery. It's just not very efficient. It's a brick dimension, which...
Okay, thank you. Katie first, I think, and then someone from behind. Was it you? Right, okay, hi.
So I have a question. I think it's out of frustration. I know, Nigel, we've worked on projects that have come up against this, but...
Do you want to say where you're from?
Oh, sorry. So I'm Katie Rudin from Akerlof. But I wondered how we get buy-in from board level at housing associations, RPs, at, kind of like government level, into interoperability, standardization, so that we can actually scale this up. Because I think actually there are still, we're the believers probably in this room, and how we convince other people.
I can give you a one-word answer, but it's very complicated. Data. We need collectively to measure and have a collective set of metrics that we monitor and we all buy into. And then the proof's in the pudding. We're in this data age at the moment, but we are archaic in construction and house building. And what we need is the proof. We need the proof in the pudding. Do it like this, and you get the outcomes like that. We are and have suffered forever with traditional build and not performing and program management. We bring in new-ish, sometimes new, sometimes not so new technologies, believing that they're going to be speed of delivery, the quality is going to be better, there's going to be no issues, and we're not, some of those concerns are not borne out a lot of the time. So as an example, when we're building anything MMC or perceived MMC, we're not putting those assumed program savings on, because we know that there's too much risk with your follow-on trades or whatever it may be. Overhead cables, an example, on one of our sites. So I think we need a collective level of data that we all buy into, and that will give us hopefully the answers that we all need, and also the direction of travel that we need to step into next.
But we're so bad at it. So bad at it. I'm putting an awful lot of burden on the Welsh today. Has anybody in this room actually been involved with the development of the Welsh pattern book? Ooh. Excellent. Right. But I can't quite see you because I haven't got my glasses on, but, I'll come back to you in a sec. But I think, we
Sorry,
have
Trudy,
to
it's
change.
Will Frost from Saint-Gobain, Offsite Solutions.
Thank you. We have to change. I'm going back to trust again. That's really sort of got me this morning, that conversation. When we started at the Construction Innovation Hub, and a whole lot of people, including me, were relatively new to construction, and the first thing we wanted to do, we had these ideas about bringing in some manufacturing processes. How can it help? How can it improve? How can the steps be taken? Well, the first questions we asked was like, right, so what data have we got and how can we baseline it? And we got nothing, because nobody would give up anything, especially if it had gone wrong. And how can we learn?
On a commercial
we
basis.
don't actually build in the lessons learned, the continuous improvement, the baselines, and the stories, not just the data, but actually the stories. So you mentioned earlier about something going wrong, and you were just pointing through you guys, don't worry. I want to hear those stories. I want to shout about it, and I want people to learn, not go, oh, well, that didn't work, shelve it. Let's learn, let's study, let's improve, let's try again.
So can I just check then, people have the data but they're not sharing it, or people don't have the data? Both? Both?
So some people are, they're getting better, but a lot of times things are collected or measured on a project, but then not actually, analysed, not just taken forward. And lessons learnt, a session at the end of a project to go, oh, that worked and that didn't, that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
It's about getting KPIs, it's about measuring through the whole process of delivery and analysing what worked, what didn't, what we need to change, and building that in.
as an industry rather than individual, as well as individuals.
Yes.
Jake?
It's going to be a business. So Homes England, on our IMS system, we record certain levels of data. We do it for ourselves as well. So as an example, you put in category 2. Well, there's a ream of category 2 solutions, and then they're also requesting, and we've already done it anyway, to put in the PMV. So you can go category 2, PMV, but we're kind of, that only gives you a small fraction of what that means. We don't necessarily put in the program, the small nuancy problems that happen throughout that program. So the MMC solution might be fantastic, and it's worked really, really well, but the ground workers can keep up, or they can keep up. So we're not recording this level of detail. So I think we need to go granular into this detail. Hence what I mean, this is an industry actually, but we need to come up with those metrics and what they mean collectively, because otherwise we're just chasing our tail really. We're not going to come up with that.
You need consistency, don't you, to make the case to senior leaders. Let's have I'll come to you if we're just going to do a question on this side of the room. Did you have your hand up? Okay. And then I'll come to the gentleman at the back.
So many years ago, when John Prescott was still alive, John Prescott was Deputy Prime Minister, and he said, "Thou shalt be zero carbon homes." And you know, we built a huge scheme of zero carbon homes with Barrett's, and they are beautiful. And we did post-occupancy evaluation, and we still do, and the community love them. They really love them. And Barrett stopped doing them the minute the government decided that zero carbon wasn't a thing. So what I'm suggesting, and it's interesting to see what Tom said, because he sort of deferred up, didn't he, when I asked the question, what can the GLA do? It seems to me that we need affordable housing, mass affordable housing. There's not much money. Unless we collaborate, we'll be spending that money badly. So as everyone has said, standardisation means different things to different people. But we have to work out what standardisation looks like in all its variety. We have to collaborate more, and we could start slow and accelerate until 2029 by learning lessons and so on. But it takes that very human thing. I think that unless the government builds it into a grant programme and insists on anybody wanting that to collaborate, even if it's just for part of the programme, we'll continue having well-intentioned discussions where we all agree, but get together. Not a question, was it? No,
Mike, I missed the statement this morning that I think was quite an interesting address to the audience. I was disappointed I missed it. But there was some words resonating from the same chap when they'd done the Lord's inquiry, which was, how long have we got to put money into this? Well, it seems like longer.
Question at the back, and then I'll come to the middle panel.
Thank you. Jake Boomhauer from Boomhauer and Associates. My question is, I mean, the sector is judged as one. How do we build better partnerships and sell what we're doing without inadvertently putting down different material types or different systems? You know, timber versus steel, 2D versus hybrid versus 3D. How can we sell our benefits and the partnership we want to be a part of without inadvertently putting each other down? And I guess the second part to that is, you know, I think the MMC sector would be treated more seriously if we were, less divided, if you will. And just any thoughts on that from the panel, please?
Again, from our side, I can only speak from our side, but we do have a platform that has timber frame, steel frame, large format block, cassette systems, roofing systems, which promotes the flexibility that a client needs for the type of build, but the standardization that works for all of them. And a lot of people are starting to use that platform and see the benefit to say, right, if we work within these design parameters, which are, I'm sure you'll agree, Nigel, the earlier involvement we get, the better in terms of driving the design intent, then anyone can use anything, not only our systems, it's just working around a grid that works for offsite, but work within that platform of products and portfolios to deliver a lot more efficiency and to start to design out cost. A lot of the cost that we tend to see now is in consultancy, where you have consultant appointed by consultant by consultant. The last person I was talking to this to said they had a £100 million building and they'd spent £20 million before we put a shovel in the ground in consultancy. A consultancy in the UK is one of the highest costs in the world. And then those inefficiencies in the supply chain, where you've got an elongated supply chain, traditional supply chain this is, not on the MMC side, where you have supply, distribution, subcontractor, main contractor, all of which are adding margins to materials and products. Starting to get an understanding of where margins are being added and values being added is great, but where margins are being added just for passing an invoice on, then it's the sort of the fat, for a better word, in construction that is there to bring down the cost and promote efficiencies so people are more engaged on a level playing field rather than this sort of hierarchical approach.
I'm going to give you a designer's response to that, Jake. I think we're driven by space standards, particularly in London anyway, if not outside London, and we are hammered to get as close to those space standards as we can. But actually, my view is they're too small. So if you want to use MMC, you can't build a one-bed flat in 50 square metres. It just doesn't work. In practice, you need about 5 to 10% more than that. You know, the 10% would be perhaps at the smaller end of the, one-person flat. When you go up to three-person flats, maybe sort of 5%. When you do that, it actually, and often we find, we've analysed this. We did a big analysis of nearly 2,000 homes, and we found that people weren't getting to these space standards in practice. So we're killing ourselves to try and do it and not actually getting there. But if we give ourselves a bit of space at the beginning, we can design them in such a way that they can be built using any of those systems. So from a designer's point of view, if we're enabling MMC at the procurement stage, and we have it in mind at the beginning, if we design a one-bed flat to be, 53 to 55 square metres, and so on up through the chain, then we're doing our bit to allow that flexibility in procurement later on. So you won't have that conversation. It can be down to what's commercially appropriate for the project when you get to that stage. So I think there is a discussion about space standards as well. They were set up before MMC, really, and I just think they're wrong. And I think we should have a little working group led by the GLA who revisits them to understand how we can build apartments in London and anywhere that's using the nationally described space standards using MMC, because you pretty much can't with the standards as they are.
I know, before we move on, I've got to jump in on this because it's my opportunity to get something in that I've been waiting to say for a really long time. Jake, you and I have ranted enough about these topics together, so you know my answers, but I'm going to say, wouldn't it be great if there was a tool that was specifically designed in collaboration with hundreds of industry players that was focused on making value-based decisions about what you build, how you build it, and what you'd used. And it's out, the value toolkit, buried for 2 years in politics, having been developed in collaboration, government-funded program, is now out and available and free for everyone to access. So the value toolkit helps you make value-based decisions based on the 4 capitals, a holistic approach to delivering any asset at program or portfolio level or project. And it's not a plug for me because it was something that colleagues worked on, but it is a brilliant tool and I highly recommend you all take a look at it.
How long has it been out?
A couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
It got finished over 2 years ago and was, frankly and honestly, meant to be stood up by a government department who then went, ooh, bit risky.
And is
So
there
it's
an
been
industry?
stymied for quite some time in IP and politics, but now it is available for anyone.
Okay. And who is kind of promoting that apart from you good self?
Constructing Excellence
Right,
is
okay.
hosting it. If you look up Constructing Excellence and the Value Toolkit, you will be taken straight to it. And there are webinars and training sessions coming up in the next few weeks, right? Yep.
Excellent. Great plug. Questions from the middle? Questions from this side?
Stunned into silence.
Yeah, I
all of
know.
a sudden. What's this Value Toolkit?
Everyone's
What is
writing it
gonna
down, yeah. Yeah.
I just wonder on the value toolkit, is there how is it funded? Is there a bias?
The development of it was funded as part of the government programme through UKRI, so research and innovation grant funding to develop it. Then 125 companies were part of that development and testing of it. And then it's been a bit further developed behind the scenes by people that were trying to make it sort of more accessible and stood up. And now, as far as I know, Constructing Excellence are doing it because it's a good thing to do. Yes.
Hi there. I've just got a question about what you think about embodied carbon in relation to MMC. Because obviously there's huge potential to reduce embodied carbon, but it's not anything I've heard anyone mention so far. So that's the question really. What can we do to use MMC to drive down embodied carbon?
I guess we could stop building things. That would help, wouldn't it? And focus on the existing stock. I mean, I think, you know, again, as sort of designers focus on that, we do always try and use whatever's the existing building rather than just reverting to a, you know, demolition and rebuilds. I mean, it's not an MMC conversation, but it's a very important one nonetheless. But yeah, it's having that attitude that you're going to consider embodied carbon in your sort of melee of decisions you're making in design.
Yeah, we went on the embodied carbon journey over 10 years ago and had EPDs on pretty much every product we had in a range in the UK. And I think you can count on one hand in a period of 8 years they were downloaded and used. But now we're on a huge drive to reissue and redo all of that. And the big thing that we find with MMC is you can qualify embodied carbon a lot easier. You've got the ability with the right tools, with the right design platforms, and Katie was talking to me earlier about an investment we've made in a company called Cope, where we can develop and populate off-site systems in minutes and give a complete bomb of the materials in there. So all of a sudden, all the independent EPDs at a component level become relevant at a project level to measure, but also allow you to start to look at the end-of-life perspective, so through life and end-of-life. So can we start to look at the ability to reuse panels at the end of life, or can we make them more easier to disassemble and recycle the materials? So MMC for me allows you to get a more accurate baseline to get a better starting point to reduce the embodied carbon.
I'm really confused with it all, if I'm honest with you. So if you speak to a light gauge steel manufacturer, you can reuse their product to the end of life. And timber will be burnt, so it's a worse product. You speak to a timber frame manufacturer, it's the best thing since sliced bread. So I'm not sure the calculator is correct and right. A house generally is going to last longer than 60 years. I think that's where the calculator goes to now. So the good thing is it's coming onto our agenda and it's coming on quickly, and we're starting to monitor that. Where we're seeing local authorities trying to stimulate change, they're requesting stuff like the LETI standards, which massively reduce embodied carbon. But it's still a bit confusing, if I'm honest, at the moment. So, you know, you can look at stuff that is kind of biogenic kind of materials like timbers and natural materials, and it kind of makes sense to me. But I also do completely understand that the recycling methodology as well. But it's a bit unclear, if I'm honest, and I think we need some clarity.
Can I do it? I'm going to do another quick pitch. So my this year, I sort of decided on a bit of a resolution to constantly promote good things wherever I see them and tell the good stories, because I think we get far too much bad news. So the value toolkit, yay. Another one that relates directly to this area is the Zero Carbon Accelerator. So that's funded by GLA and the Mayor of London's office. And it is a service that companies can access to get expert advice from a range of partners about means to decarbonise, look at their businesses, look at how they actually work themselves, and look at how they deliver. So again, just look up Zero Carbon Accelerator and you'll be taken to various tools, approaches, companies, guidance and information. Because the opportunities and in MNC, and if you look down the manufacturing route, are huge, because you can do so much more at the design stage to be able to change what you deliver. And the value toolkit will help you decide if you need to deliver it, or if you should retrofit it, or anything else. So there's lots of good stuff happening if people go looking for it.
I think increasingly as designers we are thinking about embodied carbon. So from my practice point of view, we brought out a tool quite a while ago which is called HBERT, the Hawkins-Brown Emission Reduction Tool, and it was sort of open source to people to start using, and we've actually taken the decision to try and produce a commercial application, which is an interesting journey, and that's another story of another time. It's called VERT, and you could look it up, VERT, and there are others around. There's things like One Click and so on. So just not an MMC discussion really, but the very important sort of carbon discussion. I think we're all recognising that we've gone through the sort of operational understanding. We really need to understand more about embodied carbon and how we're responsible for that. So I think the design community is getting to grips with that now and starting to take that very seriously. And it is one of the key decisions that we make right from the start of the building, you know, the design process. So I think it's changing.
Just to add, I think it's changing in the right way. So we're framed to deliver zero carbon homes in use, where you could have the most energy intense home built by 4-foot concrete walls, but because it's on electric heat and you've got photovoltaics and battery, you call it a net zero carbon home. So I think it's a really good space, and I think we need to drive a lot more interest and really work out those calculations properly to drive the change that we need.
Great. Okay, have we got one more question? One more time? Yeah. Well, maybe. Yes, this lady here.
Last one.
Oh,
It's about the last comment about embodied carbon, because I think that there's lots of MMC.
Do you want to say who you are?
Sorry, Elle George from Elevate, and I also represent Indie Nature. So just to be open, I do represent natural materials manufacturer for insulation, and I disagree that there's not about the MMC that has low embodied carbon, or in fact absorbing carbon during its growing period, so that then carbon stays in place during the structure. And some examples are natural building solutions, agile homes, green core, So Modular in Wales. They're all using timber, natural materials, other products that absorb carbon during their growing. So we should be looking at those solutions, and Jake's just made a very good point about it's all very well having low operational carbon, but if you're using up all your carbon budget during the construction process, it's a bit of a waste of time, if we're being honest. Sorry, it's not a question.
Thank you. We're time up? One more? Okay, that's fine. Our last question, sir.
Sorry, Wayne Smith, SIPCO. Just an interesting conversation that's been going on in both rooms all day is language and people's understanding of language. So embodied carbon can mean lots of things to different people. The P&V calculator's been mentioned. I can put 3 P&V calculators next to each other and put the same information in, get a different output. So maybe a suite of work needs to be done where we've got legislation, how we hit building regulations, fire legislation, acoustic legislation. I think there should be a suite of work done around language. And so there's no fallibility within the language used. Is that something that you guys are thinking of, Trudy?
My pet topic. In the last 8 years of working in this environment, looking at new ways of working, I have been involved with, I did initially instigate one, I will confess, and in many workshops, looking at developing glossaries, terminology and definitions, and PAS 8700 coming out in April. We've spent how many hours talking about the definition of MMC? So literally just that one. It's incredibly difficult, and I think it's a reflection of the evolving environment that we're in. The technology, the approaches, the tools, the guidance, it's still all moving. Yes, it can cause problems, but I've sort of given up on trying to pin any of this down at the moment because of the constantly changing environment. And I think sometimes it's easier to just make sure that whoever you're engaging with, you're talking about the same thing in that conversation in relation to that project or that moment. I'm sorry, that's not an answer, and it certainly doesn't solve some of the challenges, but I'm just speaking the lived experience of the last 8 years.
The Offsite Alliance has got a glossary coming out soon, I think. It's sort of largely been written, but yeah. I mean, we were talking about definitions of what's a pattern book earlier on, weren't we? And so I agree, we do need to be clear about what we're saying and have a firm agreement on it. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to wrap this up because we've got about 2 minutes. So I'm going to ask our panel one question, very, very concise answer. With glasses on to read this. Usually I'd ask you what one thing you could do, but I'm going to ask you, what's the one ask you have from someone specific, could be in the audience here, could be not in this room, one specific ask from somebody or somebody that you think will help partnerships work better and faster? And I'm going to go with Trudy and finish with Jake.
Get over your egos and start sharing more. That's everybody.
As
Taking Jake's word, sharing of data. It's the data side of things is key for me, and being able to actually communicate on a platform that everyone understands and can relate to. It would be a big drive forward.
If we're asking someone else, I'm going to ask that panel of North East London boroughs to form the Buyers Club and really come together, because I really felt that was an opportunity to aggregate buying power. So probably any sort of combined authority or combination of authorities coming together so we can aggregate buying power. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
No pressure.
Sharing data, but also but airing our dirty laundry. When it goes wrong, share it. Don't be scared. Tell everybody. Be honest.
Okay, so can we just say a massive thank you to our panel? And I understand it's now out for networking.
Break time, yeah.
Break time.
Yeah. And thank you to you, Nicola. So just before you go on your break, you've got coffee break networking time until 4:15, but then you'll be going straight into your next session. So you will have to decide which room you're going into. So it's sessions 5 and 6 next. Sorry, this is a bit blurry, isn't it? So if you have already signed up or are choosing to join the modular movement session, that's in this room. So be back here for 4:15. If you're joining the energy efficient housing conversation, that's next door in Suite C. So 4:15, be back in the right session. Thanks everybody, and thanks again panel.